engaged. Yet this sometime taxi driver, convicted bank robber, would-be Prime Minister and all-round cad managed to convince more than one trusting woman to part with thousands of dollars. Mr Venning picked his marks carefully, targeting lonely and vulnerable women who used his cab and fell for his kind words. But as Frank Pangallo reports, when Phillip Venning took these women for a ride, he ended up pocketing more than a cab fare, in fact almost $500,000.
Phillip Venning is totally motivated by money and power. He preys on vulnerable people, an absolute monster. A man who is capable of deceiving anybody for his own financial gain.
Adelaide taxi driver Phillip Venning is now behind bars, but nowhere near as long as his victims would have hoped for. Or for that matter, what he actually did to them.
Phillip is like two personality, you know. He could be such a kind man, he could be such a monster you would never see in your life.
A still shaken Teodora Nyadako has finally cut Venning from her life, but only after enduring a sadistic year-long relationship.
I believe him. I was sick, I was alone, and he always said, you know, he look after me, he have bad life, and now he knows what this life mean, and he will stay with me, and we be married, and everything be beautiful.
He conned her into a relationship, a fantasy relationship. Something was too good to be true. He abused her. He took charge of her finances.
An angry Eugene Nyadako says Venning exploited his mother's trust and her limited grasp of English.
No, I don't fear him, but I fear he's a very evil, cunning man, capable of doing anything.
So far, the smooth-talking Lothario has fleeced 4 women in his life for more than $500,000.
This is the way he operates. He smothers you with kindness until he wins you over, and then he exploits you.
Margaret is Venning's first wife and mother of his 2 children, who for 17 years had to live with a deluded, often violent man driven by an obsession for wealth and power.
He comes across as a very kind, considerate person, but it's just an act until he gets what he wants, gets whatever money he can from them. Then he becomes really violent.
And here's how far he's been prepared to go, dressing as a woman to rob $20,000 from the bank where he once worked.
Is that you?
Yes, it is.
Why did you rob a bank?
I'll deal with that question.
Mr. Venning was reluctant to explain his criminal actions in this ABC interview with Today Tonight producer Graham Archer a few years ago.
But Mr. Venning, you held up your own branch.
Yes.
And did a staff member say to you, "Don't be so silly, go away, Phil"?
Yes, he did.
And the next day you were caught?
Yes.
This was around the time of another of his grandiose dreams, saving Australia from Bob Hawke and Paul Keating, with his own political party, based in the fortress-like home he built in the Adelaide Hills.
When he started his own political party, I knew he completely flipped his lid.
The house was meant to be a sophisticated communications base, but like the political party, it too never got off the ground, thanks largely to Venning's bad organisation.
He always had big ideas, anything that was going to make money. He had to set the world right. Everybody else was wrong, and he was going to make the world right.
At the time, nobody knew where all the money came from. Today, Margaret Venning knows the truth. It came from an inheritance left to Leslie Chigwitten, a woman Venning befriended in a taxi.
I warned her before she handed over most of the money, but she thought I was just a jealous ex-wife and didn't believe me.
When that relationship failed, Venning turned his attention to a frail 75-year-old called Joyce Phillips. He convinced her to sell her home. Then he bought himself a taxi with her money and squandered the rest. Joyce suffers dementia and is now on her own in a nursing home, penniless.
He had to set the trend all the time. You know, he had to have the best radio and everything had to be the best. And he'd afford that before he could afford anything for his family.
Like all the women before, Venning swept Theodora off her feet with his promises.
He told me, you know, to buy the car and I'm going to teach you how to drive. And you have your own car, you have no problem. You can sell it anytime you want. There'll be everything on your name. You have no worry.
Then he conned her into mortgaging her home to buy this high-performance Holden worth $80,000. A car he then used for himself as a taxi and which he drove unregistered and uninsured for a year.
His total focus was to buy this car as quick as possible. As soon as the car was purchased, the man's attitude changed. It changed much for the worse.
I've been bad so bad and in the head and break my glasses and push me to the chair, to the table, and it was terrible. You can't describe that person is the person. It's like monster. He said many times, you know, I should kill you a long time ago.
Venning became so violent that Theodora had him arrested. Fed up with her ex-husband's gigolo antics, Margaret Venning went to court to lend her support to Theodora, a woman she'd never met.
How do you feel about the other women?
I feel sorry for them. They lose everything, and he left them with nothing.
Venning is due for release in 2 months. In the meantime, he's left a trail of debts behind him. Altogether, more than $1 million, including almost $500,000 to the Commonwealth Bank and $44,000 in child support to his ex-wife.
What sort of thoughts go through your mind every day?
I just wonder what my life could have been if I hadn't ever met Phillip Venning.
Now,